Welcome to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. I'm your host, Dave Fearon. This is a conversation with Nicole Thorogood, who is a manager of a very large segment of the Mass Mutual Insurance Company business lines. When she was my student, I knew that there was something special there, and she was going to be a practitioner's practitioner. In her way, she was so well organized and so goal focused and was so able to achieve these goals at a remarkable young age that I had no doubt that when I brought her in for a conversation for our podcast, that you would hear the sound of pretty much everything Peter Vale and I have said about the nature of a practice. She is it. Nicole Thorogood. Well, everyone, one of the great pleasures that I've had in this series of episodes is to reach back, essentially to the present, but back to the time when some of the folks who've been in these conversations were my students. And I also kept up the practice once I said goodbye to them and wished them well, that when I felt they had something about the way they're committed to growth and change, I wanted to bring them back to my classes as an example of what everyone can be if they make a particular choice. Before I introduce Nicole, let me remind her and the listeners what Peter Vale said about that choice to be different. He said, practice is the conscious ability fairly consistently to produce intended results, and to do so across a range of circumstances, and to do so while growing and changing oneself to meet the changing circumstances in which one's practice exists, underscore while growing and changing oneself. So over the last at least 10 years and more, when I have brought Nicole Thorogood back to my classes and now to you in this podcast, I've never seen anyone who's so intentional about using her practice as a way to continually grow and change herself in changing contexts. So welcome, Nicole. What's your first thought about hearing that, what we call way of thinking about practice?
Thanks, Doc. I thank you for having me. I think it is something that I learned way back when I was sitting in the classroom with you and learning about leadership and changing practice. I think for me, I always had goals set, and I always said I was going to hit them by a certain age, whether it be buying a house, getting a certain job or a salary, or having a baby. And it doesn't always go as planned. And I think taking a step back and understanding that the road you take is not going to be perfect. At goals, you just have to figure out how you change and adapt along the way.
That's right on. Well, I'm glad you made the point about you being a goal setter, because the other thing I was thinking about, other than reintroducing this working understanding and practice, was to tell you what I think of when I think of you. Goal! Goal! You know, the hands go up. It's a hockey announcer. It's a soccer announcer. It's that great excitement when effort gets you closer and closer, and then goal. But in your case, it's goal and then goal and then goal. Now, in your role, and you can tell us a bit about it, you have probably just the right fit for having that desire to be a goal achiever, and that is projects. As I've known you, you've particularly gravitated toward and been rewarded for your ability to work in projects. Now, that's not a lot of people, particularly when you're responsible for the results beyond what you can achieve, but other people. So first, tell us a little bit about where you're working and what your current title is, and then we'll talk more about life in a project-by-project way.
Sure. So currently I'm at Mass Mutual, a great company. I've been there for over 10 years now. I am the head of institutional portfolio, which institutional is made up of 5 different business areas, so very unique businesses. With that, I oversee a team of project managers who work to plan. We work on strategy and especially the execution of initiatives to drive the business value of the organization. So my responsibility is not only to be a leader and support that team and help them grow, but it's also the overall accountability of the entire portfolio. So multi-million-dollar projects, initiatives, everything from financial management to the overall execution of the benefits for the business. I sit on the business side. I do partner very closely with IT. And essentially, my background, right out of college, I started as a project manager. You don't typically do that right out of school. Someone took a chance on me. Mass Mutual trained me to be a PM, and I continued being a PM due to the fact that I was organized, maybe a little OCD. And I managed a number of projects for Mass Mutual and then ultimately started managing people and larger scale programs and portfolio, which has led me to my current role now.
Wow. Yes, that's a big wow, because Mass Mutual is a very large and very well established company in the world of insurance. And you are responsible now, not just for projects by projects, but teams of project managers, but business results in those 5 areas. What are those 5 areas, just so we can put that in context?
Sure.
Within that portfolio.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's your typical life insurance and retirement. That falls outside of what I oversee now. I oversee the specialty businesses. So when we think about funding agreements, investments, mutual funds, corporate and bank-owned life insurance, so a CEO of a bank or some C-level executive, the company can take out life insurance on them. So it's a little bit different. We also oversee medium-term notes, municipal GICs, and defined benefits, as well as pension risk transfer. So all 5 very different businesses. And as we look at our current market conditions, a lot of the organization is struggling with sales just because they can't go out and sell life insurance. People are holding on to their money because there's so much uncertainty. In our organization, we are actually growing during this time. It's that stable value and those mutual funds and investments that are really keeping us going. So it's been an interesting time, and 5 very different businesses. There's a lot to learn, and I'm learning every day.
I don't know if I did it when you were in my classes, but I used to use many analogies to try to make the organizational behavior that we looked at graspable. And one of the analogies was the old vaudeville act, where there would be usually a man who would have a pole, and he'd put a plate on the pole and he'd start spinning it. And then he'd pick up another pole and start another plate and another and another. And I'm seeing you spinning 5 very different plates on that stage with an audience. The audience being all of the senior leaderships, your investors, and a whole bunch of others, and in particularly the audience of your fellow employees. So I'd like to talk about that, because I would think that if I were employed in any one of those 5 business areas, with project managers connecting you to them, I would think, wow, here's a person who doesn't look like the typical gray-haired insurance executive running this significant part of our business. Well, I've always known you to always be the one who was either too young or the wrong gender or not enough experience, you name it. And you've always had that. And now, first and foremost, because you are a champion for a whole lot of other people who are too something. Their skin color isn't right, their accent's too strong. How do you being a role model?
I think it's a great opportunity to have. I've been very lucky. I think for me, it's been the managers and the leaders that I've had over the past 10 years at Mass Mutual, specifically a few of them, some with us, some not with us anymore, including my current manager. He is an executive with the company. He is wonderful. I think it's those leaders that have invested their time and support into me has made me become the leader that I want to be. And so for me, I've gone from a team of 22 to now a smaller team of 7. I enjoyed having 22 people on my team, but I even more enjoy having a smaller team now because I can help them grow like these leaders has helped me grow. So we definitely have a great team. And I think being a woman in leadership has been enlightening. It has also been interesting to be at this level at 33 years old. As much as I set goals and I knew I would do it, I'm still in shock that I did it by 33. So I want to be that role model for other women too. So I've taken a leadership position in the women's BRG at MassMutual as well. And we're really rolling out this mentoring program to really help women. And again, it's not just for women, it's for men as well. And we, as allies, and especially in the market that we're in now and just the current environment out there, it's a sad world. And so if we could do anything to make it a better place, I'm definitely part of that, at least at MassMutual.
33. I almost was going to try to mention your age, but then that would make me feel a lot older. Not that I'm happy to be alive at 77, but I think 33, along with the other too young, is a real commentary on what it means to be in practice. Now, you've had titles and you have all kinds of other ways you're identified in the company, but I'm going to be asking you an unfair question now, because practices could be anything. That's why Peter Bale and I always had a big P for practice. Could be anything from a gentleman he once mentioned who had the largest ball of string in the country, and that was his devotion to having the largest ball of string in the country. But if you scrape away a lot of other things, Nicole, what's the thing you love to do best and always want to keep doing it?
Well, I think
being a mother, I have to throw that in.
Yeah, so that was totally going to be my answer, right?
I stole that because
yes.
I know about that. I know you, and I know how proud you are of Lily, who is 3 now.
Yes, 3.5. Yeah, so my answer now would, of course, be mother, right? I love being mom to Lily. But I also, when I think about over the past 10 years of what I've done in my career and what I love most, it's being a leader. And I've turned down a number of offers and job positions because I did not want to leave the organization that I'm currently in because of the people I supported, because of the people that support me and the leaders of the organization. And it's not about money. It's not always about that. It's really about your happiness and your growth and your ability to continue to grow. And so for me, it is truly my ability to be a leader in the organization and help others get there as well.
Yeah, Peter and I looked at leadership as a practice within all other practices. What's mysterious about it? It's different for each person. Therefore, you have to have it in your heart, like you just said, to say, I am a leader. That's what I do. And I don't want to not be a leader going forward.
Right.
And if it can't be here, then it's going to be somewhere. Is that fair enough to place on you?
Absolutely.
Kind of leading. So how have you studied being a leader?
I think for me, definitely your class. I go back to the beans and the points and everything associated with it. People laugh, and I still remember the stories. I think for me, I continue to try and learn, but the best way to learn is really from the leaders that are in my organization. And there is a big difference between a manager and a leader. And that's definitely something I've learned over the past few years. And I know I want to be a leader. I don't want to be a manager. There's no I in team. And it's funny, it's so cliche to say, but at the end of the day, I've learned based on the leaders that have supported me, who I want to be and how I want to interact with my team and the people I support.
You're bringing your teams, even though you're having more prosperity within the company than perhaps some of the others are now, but you're bringing them through a number of rings of change. We all started with the beginning of this horrible year, with recognition that we have to change almost every way we work. But what are some of the, I mean, in your heart, you're feeling what your people are feeling. That's why I know you're a leader. What are some of their challenges that you and your team leaders are accommodating to the best of your ability so far?
Yeah, so my team actually is very close, and we've had a number of awful things occur over the past few years, wonderful things occur, and things out of our control. And so just to kind of put it all into perspective, we had an individual who lost her baby. We had, at the same time, two other of my employees had babies. I had 3 people out of 7 out on maternity leave at one time. So it was adapting to those folks out of the office as well as the other team kind of keeping the work afloat. We had people who got sick or took vacation. So again, the good and the bad happened. And then COVID happened and we all worked from home. And prior to that, I had one employee who was full-time remote. And we never fully understood, did he feel part of the team? Am I, as a manager and leader, including him enough? And what I realized was I was forgetting about him. So I knew as a manager, I had some work to do with my remote employee to make him feel more included and inclusive with the team. And then we all ended up at home. And some folks loved it. Other folks hated it. They missed the face-to-face interaction. Now, not only were you expected to work from home, but you were expected to work from home with kids. 4 of my teammates have kids under 3. So you can only imagine, me included, with Lily at 3.5, when I would be on calls with executives and my child would tell them she needs to go potty. So
hey, you gotta go when you gotta go.
I think for us, it was being able to be supportive, checking on each other through this time, and realizing that everyone, whether it's kids, not kids, parents, pets, you name it, everyone was dealing with something different. And I feel like my goal was to put at least that support in place and ensure that everyone had that open dialogue, whether it be something as crazy as a Zoom call or trivia once a week, like just something to keep the morale up and making sure everyone was okay. So yeah, I mean, with the market conditions, COVID, everything, the personal things that have occurred on our team, it's definitely been a challenging, I'll say, 1.5 years for the team, but we're here to support each other. So if anything, we've grown to be a closer team, which has actually, I feel like, increased our productivity and has supported our business better.
Well, the leading is working from your standpoint, and you're fostering the leading among others to make the whole thing go forward. Now, speaking of going forward, I think when you and I chatted prior to this conversation, you said that there's also going to be facility changes, which will be another life change.
Yes.
Speaking of facilities, some people probably could continue to be remote regardless, but others, it's a big change. Talk a little bit about that to the extent you can.
Sure. So Mass Mutual is doing great things. They have created a large presence in the Boston area right on the seaport. It's beautiful. And they're building a whole new building there. And one of the strategic directions of the organization is to shift over 1,000 folks to that Boston building. When COVID hit, it slowed down the construction. And so ultimately, where I sit in the Enfield, Connecticut office, that's going to be closing. And the building is up for sale. It hasn't sold, so we were never giving a date of moving. But for those folks that are in the Enfield office, they will be relocated to either Springfield, Mass headquarters or the Boston office. Our team already knows where they will go. Myself and my team will go to Springfield when we are back in the office, with some travel to the Boston because our executives do sit there. But all in all, there are going to be folks that may be asked to relocate to Boston. And there's a lot of unknowns. How quickly can they build the building? What if the Enfield building gets sold? When will we move to Springfield? What will the structure be? Will it be neighborhood settings? Will I have a desk? Will I not have a desk? Or am I going to work from home from here on out because it works? So there's definitely a lot of unanswered questions, and we're all just trying to keep an open mind and listening and asking our employees what they would like and what they would feel comfortable with. And that, I think, has been key to MassMutual's success so far, is their ability to be transparent and open and ask their employees, how do you feel? Are you comfortable going back into the office? It's made a difference.
Oh, my Lord, yes. Peter, in one of our recorded conversations, said there's only really one purpose for leading, and that purpose is change. Not just to make it happen, which clearly those who make decisions to drive new behaviors are leading to an extent, but it's to be with people through change. Empathy with feet, if you will, walking the talk, but not just saying, oh, I understand how this is disruptive to you. No. And we're going to work together to make sure that we can move through this disruption and perhaps even turn it into a positive. That's you. That's always been you. I don't know if you ever knew what a huge menu of changes that you would be facing well, I think the last time you spoke to my class was my last semester, which was 2016. We're only 4 years later.
Yeah.
And even then, Nicole, you had a raft of changes, including the tragic loss of the executive who was working in the very area that you're now responsible for. All of that change. And let's see, 4 years ago, I saw Lily, but she was a bump. And you came into that classroom.
I was very pregnant, yes.
You were. There was more Lily than you because you're a relatively tiny person, but all these changes that you've gone through, including you really managed to get through some serious health challenges. I don't know. Another thing that Peter, I keep coming back to Peter, but he would have loved this conversation. Your spirit is so strong. And I don't think it just became strong when you graduated from college, but if just give a real flashback to when you could think of other moments when you saw a change had to happen, you put yourself into it with people, for people, got through it. Was that you in high school, junior high, when you were 3.5 and had to tell your parents you needed their attention? Take us back a little bit, because your spirit is indomitable.
Yeah, so it's funny you say that. So when I was 3.5, my parents got a divorce.
Oh,
and
no.
So that was the first point, I think, in my life where I probably had to figure out how things were going to be okay and what change meant at 3.5.
Definitely.
And even when I went to college, I was supposed to go to Salve Regina, and my grandmother got ill, and I did not want to go anymore. I wanted to stay local. So I went to Central, and I loved it. I loved the professor I had, and I learned a lot, and I got my degree, and it was the best decision I could have made. I got 4 extra years with her, more time with my grandmother than I would have if I went away to school. And then even from that, when I graduated, I got a job right at MassMutual, so I was very lucky. I quickly realized if I didn't get my master's right away, my MBA, that I wouldn't go back. And I was doubting myself. Is this the right decision? I'm going to work full time. I'm going to get my master's. Can I do it? There was a lot of crying that was associated with that, because on top of that, I decided to get my real estate license. Mm-hmm. So I had a lot on my plate. And then at one point, I think I contemplating just forgetting it all and going to become a nurse. That didn't pan out. I stayed down the management track, thank God, because I wouldn't be where I am today. And I kind of set goals. I set goals, within my career. There was certain positions I wanted. I knew I wanted to be a manager coming right out of your class. I knew I liked the project management once I learned it. I knew this was where I wanted to take my career. I also knew that I wanted a house, and I wanted a child, and I wanted to get married. And I did all those, and I did all those on the timeline that I said I was going to. But I think But I think the bigger thing that I've learned along the way is it doesn't always happen the way you want it to happen. And right. So whether it be the loss of my mentor, or the fact that I recently got divorced with a 3.5-year-old of my own, it's all change. And whether it be personal change, personal change that happened to my employees or my family. I think really just being a leader inside work and external to work, whether it be my family or my friends, knowing the support system I've had through my difficult times and knowing that it's not always the road you pick, and that's okay. Change is okay. It's not easy. I'll be the first to say I have anxiety over every aspect of change in my life, but it's who I am today, and I'm going to continue to set goals, and I'm going to continue to reach them. It just may not be the direction I think I'm going, but I'll get there.
You've been there. You've gotten here. I know you're going to get there. In our last few minutes of conversation, I have to say, honestly, Nicole, I'm stunned. I am so stunned. I've always had this dream when I moved full-time into teaching, particularly Peter, I think, got me going when I was his doctoral student. I had this dream that two things, at least. One, that people would love what an organization can mean when it works. An organization is an extraordinary invention of us of our species, and when an organization does what it's supposed to do and more and has great impact on the world, there's hardly anything like it. So I wanted you guys to care about organizations. That's what managers are supposed to do. You are the organization spokesperson, if you will. You speak for the whole organization, like the Lorax spoke for the trees. So that was one thing. But the other thing, and really what inspired me to work with Peter, and now that he's passed away, to continue to work, is the power of the individual who chooses to never stop getting better. And I don't care what it is at, cooking, mothering, teaching. It's so rewarding when you can find a student who lights up like that, and you know that's going to happen. They're just going to keep getting better, and maybe not in any way that I particularly envision, but the belief in better. When I was asked to record a 3-minute, imagine me speaking for 3 minutes. I can't even clear my throat in 3 minutes. But anyway, I was asked to do a 3-minute piece for my retirement reception and put up on the campus website. And I remember myself, I had no preparation, but I had my tie on. I looked pretty good. And I said, of all 50 years that I've been actively studying this phenomenon called organization behavior, there's only one word that I've learned that will always endure, and that is the word better. That's my word, better. And you have always been better. Even when you landed in places you hope you wouldn't have to, you've done better with that, and you move forward. So I would like you to have a few moments. I've given you my sermon. What moves you? What is your philosophy now, Nicole, going forward about Nicole Thorogood in the world?
Yeah, so for me, I think I mentioned it before, motherhood has placed a whole nother view on me. And my biggest goal in life is to make Lily proud. And for me, that's being her to be proud of me as a mother, as a friend, and as a woman in leadership. I want her to grow up and know my mom was a leader. My mom did good, and this is, I'm proud of her. And I think that is my biggest goal in life. And as I look to everyone on my team, and what I always tell them, it's not going to be easy. Nothing good comes easy, but it'll be worth it. It'll be worth it, and just not giving up and supporting each other. Everyone will get where they want to get, but not giving up, setting those goals, and being a leader and a friend is kind of how I look at managing my team and my role at MassMutual.
Well, you've set a very high bar, though, to measure your bettering, if you will, in regard to how Lily grows as a young woman and eventually becomes someone. If I were around 25 years from now, I would have Lily on camera, but I'm not sure I can promise that. But I would love to, because I know that she's going to have all the kind of special qualities that you have and you're exemplifying for her. This one will be fun to put out there. It'll be out in a few weeks. We edit them as we go. But what I want to really hope that people will hear, not only just your words, but the tone of your voice, is that wherever you start out, in high school, college, doesn't have to have a fancy name. We sure didn't. We had a good name, but it wasn't fancy. It wasn't Salve Regina, which is a cool place. But you find people who love to teach. You find people who love to learn. You give them time together, like we had, and great things happen. We're both better for it. Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks, Doc.
Thanks for listening to the Practice Podcast, where we discuss practice with a capital P. If you'd like to hear more, listen in on Spotify, Podomatic, and Apple Podcasts, or go to inactionresearch.com/podcast-page. And if you'd like to learn more about social inaction and the nature of practice, head over to inactionresearch.com for more information. Thank you for supporting this show. We look forward to hearing from you soon.